Hi everyone. Check. Can everyone hear my voice clearly? Okay. So, hi everyone. Today we're going to start a session. It's going to be like my very first masterclass. So, I'm super excited and nervous about the session. Okay, let's start. I am Kumudha Shankari, currently a grade 5 teacher in the Peel District School Board. And my background is like inclusive working with students with ADHD, autism, and other neurodiverse needs. And I'm across different education systems in Canada. And in the US, I hold a bachelor's of science and psychology field in the University of Madras, and I'm also certified in advanced Montessori teaching strategies. Currently, I'm pursuing master's in teaching at ITU. Over 7 years of teaching experience in elementary and middle school. Currently, I'm teaching grade 5 with a focus of inclusive education at Peel District School Board in Canada. And I was working in Village Leadership School in Chicago, Illinois. So the subject I taught science, math, social studies, and special education support students with ADHD, autism, and neurodiverse needs. So additionally to that, I'm also actively participated in school literacy program, lead, club activity organizer, and personal interest. I'm very much passionate about playing Carnatic instrument that's called Veena, and I would like to go for a nature walk and do some painting at my free time. And I'm very much passionate about lifelong learning and empowering students. Okay, so today's expectations, as we all know, we have to be respectful to each other during the presentation. And please keep your mics muted unless you're asked to speak. Please be aware of your camera and please use the raise of hands emoji if you have any questions. So please help to me to create a positive learning environment for today. Okay. Okay. To begin with, the session learning objective. So basically, I've included from Bloom's taxonomy. It's one of the very important order for teachers to implement their strategic way of learning techniques. So it's in the order of lots and hots, so where you can implement the students or learners to get a positive way of strategic learning methods. So it starts from identify, recognize diverse learning needs. So you begin to identify that not all students are accessing learning equally, right? So in inclusive focus, acknowledge the difference in learning style and abilities, languages, and backgrounds. For example, so when you notice the students in your classroom, if a student is struggling with ELS and students with learning disabilities are not participating in the whole class discussions, right? So we tend to analyze why these barriers investigate and then the reasons behind lack of participation and sometimes they couldn't focus because of the background, right? So we work towards their IEPs and we do some observations on their voice. Example, when the teacher analyzed the ELL student struggle with vocabularies with a student with ADHD, find it hard to follow, to understand the conversations, right? So those are the things that we identify and analyze, and we design accordingly to their needs. We include certain strategic way of learning, that is UDL principle, universal design for learning. And based on that, we implement various strategic ways to include all the learners to get a successful learning environment. So these are some of the Bloom's taxonomy's orders. Okay, so before getting into the session, we're going to do some ice-breaking questions. So I'm going to ask you to think about your school days. Share one word that describe how you felt when you were, included or excluded in your learning environment. Basically, in your classroom, it can be by your teachers, by your friends. So where you would be like, included in certain situations, and that how do you feel that when you are included? And then the same way when you are excluded, how what was the feeling that you felt during the time? So I want to just think about and do your response. You can go and click to the link for pollev.com, or you can send your response through your chat. Okay, so I see some of the responses like valued, happy, or some of them said that if they excluded, they would feel isolated, right? Yeah, it's when you're included in certain time, like you feel safe that you're in the right place to get your information, to get education, right? Yes. I see lots of responses that says valued. Certainly, yes, right? So, when you have a right learning environment, you feel that you're valued and your thoughts, your ideas are valued. So you get motivated to do more, to achieve for next steps, right? Yes. As a student, I felt during my school time like I always wanted my teacher to acknowledge or, you know, to validate my questions, my doubts. So I feel like safe that I am in a right environment so I can focus, I can express my feelings and thoughts about what I want to do, right? Yes. So we're going to debrief the questions that we felt about the poll EV. So, what pattern or theme do you notice in the words that emerged? And how might a student with expectations like feel in our classroom without inclusive strategies, right? So, some of the changes that we can make to ensure all the students are feel valued and supported. So, what do you notice like while sharing a word? Many likely highlights feeling of confidence or anxiety, right? That's the power of classroom climate. So when your inclusion isn't just about academics, it's about emotional safety and connections, right? So for example, like when a student with selective mutism joined in my class, we used a non-verbal participation chart, right? So over the time, with the support, with the friend support, so he collaborated with the team. So he had like a trust building with the classroom atmosphere and environment. And one day he got like bloomed with whispering responses during partner work. He started collaborating with friends and he started sharing his ideas. So that's how we build confidence with those students, right? So when you include the students with the mainstream, they feel confident, they feel like, they are valued and they wanted to share more thoughts. So it's basically like building empathy and, improving your teaching practice. So, so these are the two masters in inclusive education scholars. Dr. Lenin Flore. She's a Bell Chair of Education Emirate known for her work on the concept of inclusive pedagogy, right? And Mr. Mel Anko is a professor of education and co-director of the Center for Equality and Education at the University of Manchester. So they have been introduced like various thoughts about inclusive learning, and I'm going to share like one of their famous quote um, is inclusive pedagogy is about extending what is ordinary ordinarily available to everybody rather than providing for all by differentiating for some. So it means all students learn together in the same space with individual supports. And inclusion is not integration, right? It's not about making students fit the system, but adapting the system to fit students, right? So for example, a student with a physical disability in my class, so we use like voice activated device to write stories, right? Or to express their feelings. So this way the class learned how to wait, to collaborate, and to include their ideas during group writing tasks. So we always give space to everyone. There is always, have room for everyone in the classroom to include. You just have to plan accordingly. Sometimes we need more patience to include everyone's thought, everyone's ideas, so they feel valued. So based on this inclusive education, I have added a video. Since it's a 6 minutes video, I'm going to skim through the main area that we're going to focus on today. Let's play the video.
Remember our last trip together?
You mean our first stint in social services from Singapore? We went to Finland last summer for a very special series.
Watch if you haven't.
On inclusive education.
Sounds like a big word, but the idea is really fundamental. And this time, I'm really excited to be in Canada to learn about that version of inclusive education.
Could you tell us a little bit more about your school? I notice all these signs around that say, all are welcome.
We had an assembly about all are welcome, meaning no matter how we look like and what we do to express ourselves, we all are welcome here in this school together.
We have one grade 6 boy. He's been in our classes like since the beginning of kindergarten. He has autism, and like I know what makes him upset and then what calms him more down.
You know, in Singapore, we have very different schools for learners like that, so they are not in the same classrooms as their typically developing peers.
I think that's actually very interesting because I've never heard of that because here we don't do that.
Back in the late 1940s, early 1950s, the only option for education to people with disabilities, and I use the word education loosely there, was Woodland School. In the 1950s, 7 family groups gathered, and their primary motivation at that time was having their loved ones come out of Woodland School to receive education in their neighborhoods. As the families' expectations for the people that they love shifted, and we were able to drive similar policy shifts here in British Columbia. From that point on, the journey of deinstitutionalization began. It really picked up steam in about the 1970s and 80s. It was still in a very segregated model at that time. But at least that environment was nestled within the community rather in a separate institution.
When we first moved to inclusion, there was resistance, both from the general education schools and from segregated schools, because it was a new change. So we didn't move everybody all at once. We worked with those people who really wanted it, and then gradually shrunk our special education school until it was closed completely. By the beginning of 2000, there were no special education public schools left in the province of BC.
So yeah, so that's the video like we were trying to understand about the special education and inclusive of learning methods. So back in centuries, like inclusive learning environments, students with diverse learning needs learn alongside general education peers supported in the same classroom, right? Um, so we're going to understand the concepts that we saw look at the video. So basically, like they had like separate stream level for the special needs, and over the period of time, they identified that to include those students in mainstream that can benefit their academic skill and behavior changes. So that motivated everyone to include to be part of it because we are going to live in the same world, we're going to live in the same environment after the learning, right? So why not to include their those kind of uh, disabilities to include in mainstream where they can also feel valued and included in the mainstream level, right? So when you include those things, what are the benefits that we can achieve? So we can see like fosters in social sensitivity and empathy to collaborate among all the students, right? And we include benefits both students with and without disabilities by enriching their classroom culture. So what the main takeaway from the video that I would say empathize that inclusive education is just not merely about placing students together physically. It's about redesigning teaching support and the mindset, more of like mindset, so every student can meaningfully participate and thrive in shared learning space, right? Okay, out of all, like what is like inclusive learning for today's? Inclusive learning means like it's just not the, including everyone. It's like all students, regardless of the ability that they could do and what are the background that they have or the language or equal access to meaningful learning, right? So some of the elements that we could, identify in learning environment could be physical inclusion, learning support, and language access, cultural responsiveness. When I say physical inclusion, it's about like including everyone. For example, like when in our mainstream, like we have a phys ed class for the mainstream and for the special education students, irrespective of the background they have. Even if the child is in the wheelchair, they still have something to do during the phys ed class. Just not leaving them in the classroom environment that they couldn't participate. It's just like it's our idea, right? Once you get involved in all the activities that's been um, planned for the students, when you include the other students, they always learn from their peers. They learn from something that are happening around them. So rather than excluding and taking call, just give them a chance, sometimes it can click out, sometimes it can boost motivate them, they can start believing in them when you are more welcoming and when you are more included. So it supports student with physical disabilities and learning support. We're going to see more depth in learning support. What are the um, issues that we can identify? Like, you can always have students like with dyslexia and ADHD, where they find difficulty in learnings. So accordingly, we can plan. There's a lot of tools to help and support to them who has those kind of criterias. And moving on to learn language access. So, for example, in Canada, we are like learning with different cultural backgrounds, students, families that they are coming, and right. So each one has their own language or cultural background. So addressing them and then giving them like appropriate way of beginning. For example, when you have a student in class like having a different language barrier, so we have a team called ELLS and where we bring those students and families to give additional support and additional practice to include in their mainstream. and that we could do for language access. For cultural responsiveness, like we celebrate in our school district school board. So we celebrate like each year and each month a different cultural background, since there's a lot of cultural background that's going on, right? So every month we have like a certain heritage month, black history month, Tamil cultural month. So we celebrate those months, and we bring out those cultures, dress wears, and food that they wear. We talk about more examples about what they are good at doing it. So we bring those things, and then we discuss as a class. So the child belong to that. They feel valued, and they have that confidence, and they're having that safe, inclusive way of learning, right? So when I say like a language barrier, I had a student called Sarah when I was in a grade 5. So she had issue with dyslexia, and she had a trouble with reading and understanding text. So we figured out together as a team, we sat down, what are the issues that she's going through because of dyslexia. And she had like hard time in reading and understanding and comprehension level, and sometimes she had trouble with writing, spellings, and that affected her academic drastically. So we sat down with the team and with parents, and we what we can do, and we addressed the problem. We were like testing her consistently based on the tools that we provided. So in at classroom, we provided her like additional tools where she can go practice. There's lots of websites to read along, like where she can hear the learning concepts behind, and then she can read together. So this way she practiced, and then we could see the progress in certain month. So and we like it was like very much eye opening for everyone. So over the time she felt that she was included in all the topics we are talking. She could interact during the concepts of interactions, and she was like progressed like very well. Like we could see the report cards and test papers. It showed it. So now I'm going to ask you again to do a poll, Evie, based on the issue that I had. What is your thought? What are the ideas? Like, if you were a teacher, like what you would suggest to improve this ability, like a student who's going through with dyslexia? I want your response posting in the poll, Evie, or you could share it in the chat. So how do we support a student who is going through a dyslexia? You could go click on the link that's been highlighted on the left corner. Yeah. So how do we support a student who has dyslexia, right? Like I see progress, and we celebrate their wins. Yeah, there's always like a website called Developmental Reading Assessment. So we could assess the child, and accordingly we could find the reading level of the student, and then we give more books in their reading level. So practice them, or reading by read along website, or by practicing more understanding comprehension, answering the questions. So they feel that they are valued, and the confident level increased for them. And for those things, like we celebrate, like as a class, we have like some incentives where they could feel that they are, doing their progress. And like additionally, like we could do some extra help during lunch or during recess time. We could always ask the students to reach to the class staff room and ask for help, and audiobooks. Yeah, and we have to give some time to understand what really means they're going through. And with reading with peer really helps and supports. I can see a lot of people like posting it, reading with peers, and constantly like having a checks whether they're doing on the right path, appreciating, giving opportunities to share their thoughts, ideas, using scaffolding method of teaching, believing that they can do independent work on their own. All those things, progress matters, right? Amazing. Thanks for your response. Moving on to next slide. So how do we support? We were looking at guided reading, right? Small group instructions. So that builds Sarah's confidence and fluency in understanding the language. Audiobooks, yes, audiobooks gives access to grade level, stories. Like you assess their reading level based on that, give some reading books, and it boosted their comprehension level. And adaptive materials like lessons tailored to her learning styles. So it made content easier to understand and to progress better, right? So the outcome could be reading accuracy that improved very well, and the participation increased, the confidence level boosted, and self-esteem has increased. So this way, it's an inclusive pedagogy, says plan for everyone, not just the average. So teach with all learners in mind, use accessible and flexible strategic ways. So cultural, linguistic, and neurodiverse difference are strengths, not challenges. It's an instruction should reflect that. Example, during a festival celebration and a student is fasting, so we adapt and physical education schedules and provide quite reflective alternatives, right? So this showed respect for cultural diversity and made students feel understood what they're having, what they are going through, right? So learners diversity. Every student is unique. So respect the difference in their culture, in their ability, and their learning style, and adapt instruction to fit varied needs. So for special education support, we understand their IEPs and accommodations, and we give like one-on-one support. Just not the paperwork. They are also like tools for access and uh, progress. So, for example, a student used slant board and fidget tools to stay engaged during writing tasks. So we documented the process using a digital portfolio so that parents could access weekly. It's just like collaborating with parents and the teachers what the students is going through so they can work the same at home. So it helped the student to motivate and support in their own understanding, right? So it supports the specifics and personalized. So using IEPs, it's very assertive tech. I'm saying that. And what are the other ways like collaboration, right? So inclusive teaching is a team support. It's just regular, communication with specialists like families, creates consistent support from their caregivers. And for example, like during my IEP meeting, the student led part of the discussion about what helped him focus and his self-advocacy improved everyone and guided future classroom practices, right? Yeah, teamwork makes inclusion work, and teachers, families, and specialists work together to build their IEPs based on their progress. And co teaching and open communication helps most of the time to identify and to problem solving issues. Technology tools is various technology tools that helps remove learning barriers. So use text to speech apps and online platforms to include their inclusive learning tools. And we provide interactive and personalized access to learning. These are some technology tools that we can include. So, what is true inclusion? It's more than just placing students together. It means, like, thoughtful planning, ongoing support, and everyone feels they belong and succeed, right? So true inclusion means that all students are active participants, just not present. It takes thoughtful planning, support, and a belief in students' potential, right? Some of the key strategic way of inclusive learning I use at classroom is like UDL. It's a universal design for learning, where you can design lessons that take works for all students, just not one particular student or one particular group want to achieve. Right? It plans to everyone, and differentiated instruction is a good strategic way. It changes how you teach to every learner is included. And in co-teaching method, the teacher works as a team to support all the students in the classroom atmosphere. So the provides individual supports with IEP and assistive tech. We are classroom culture, we mostly build with community, adjust practice, and advocate for each learner's success. Right? When I saw like a quiet student in my classroom with anxiety, so I built her confidence by pairing her with a supportive peer and celebrating like small steps, like sharing a small group and small achievements, right? Where you can celebrate and make them feel that they are progressing at their own speed. So it's like building your peer friendship and building a safe classroom to meet their understandings. Adjusting teaching based on students' feedback and progress, right? So you can always talk to students like one on one, what they really worked well, what did not work well, and we can accordingly change the teaching methods to that particular student. So based taking feedbacks from the students helps me, to give inclusive way of learning methods. So inclusion must be like proactive. Proactive means like, you have to plan ahead, that I said, like design well, to have like flexibility in teaching methods and anticipate students' need before they arise. Like you have to identify what your student really want and where they're really struggling to it, right? According to that, you plan and you break down the steps, concepts to make sure that it reaches to every student in the classroom and prepare that support earlier. Like example, like some students can understand visually teaching, some can, so those kind of flexible setting you have to make sure that's present in technology tools. Holistic way of teaching methods, so they need like support learning and feelings, right? So based on that, like balance academic with emotional well-being for the students and use like social emotional learning strategies, identify like what are they best at, identify what they really are good at doing, and how what are the strategic way of understanding their concepts, find out those things and include, right? So these things like will create a positive classroom environment. And finally, like well-being first, that every student matters, prioritize safety, belonging, and voice. Check in like regularly, like with students about their uh, constant work, what they're doing, and celebrate their effort and talk about their effort, like, make sure that they are doing progress, just not the result. Even if the child is not getting good grades, but still they are working towards their progress, still talk about it, still, make value about that. Those kind of things are very important in learning environment. Okay, so some of the key values of inclusion is equity. Inclusion must be rooted in respect, equity, and the belief that every child can learn. So fair does not mean like equal, right? It means giving each students what they really need to succeed. So that's what we say, like give each students what they need to succeed and personalized support. Fair is always same. And participation. Every student has a voice and a role. Active learning for all. So it's like group work discussions, hands-on task, giving some based on the concept that we thought, like give some hands-on activity. Like you can do it in science classes, like, include everyone, provide all the works that they can try it out with their experiments, doing some, cardboard works or something projects based on the concept that they understood. make the students understand, like make the students believe that they understood the concept, with various technologies or hands-on activities. So the participation is very important in the inclusive way of learning. And belonging is like every student feels respected and included. So it gives their safety and welcoming classroom school environment with a positive peer relationships. Like when they have like good friendships, they collaborate, they discuss their content, and it starts up their education from there. So, conclusion, like use home languages, In conclude, like you can include all the languages that they background. So, greet students in their languages, add bilingual signs or books that they can include in the classroom environment. So, you can always say, like, how do you say welcome in your language? When you ask a student, they really feel appreciated or welcomed. Okay, they wanted to understand, like they wanted to know what language I'm speaking. So if you can ask those questions in your classrooms, they feel like, more belonging in their environment. So you're building belonging. So create a classroom agreements together, what we are going to do, what are the rules that we're going to follow as a class. So those things, like, like a team, you can work together, ask everyone's individual ideas about, what are the best thing to solve this problem, what are the best things to achieve, this goal. So these kind of things, they put together, so they feel that they are valued, and then they take responsible. So it celebrates, different cultures, traditions, and holidays. So invite students to share a family story or an object. Sometimes they can bring their own culture things, and they could explain to the class why it is like that and how do they follow that. So those kind of things, always you can do it as a class. And affirm identity, let students see themselves in the curriculum. So use books, topics, and images that reflect all cultures background, right? Just not like one culture, like give them like various examples from each culture. So in a way, like they learn about all cultures and they feel valued from, what they are up to. So these are the good things that we can affirm identify, whose stories are we missing in this unit. So those kind of questions we can always include. And promote critical thinking. So ask students to explore fairness, equity, and justice. Like, what would make our school more inclusive? Like, what do you think? Where we can improve to build inclusive way of learning classroom. So these are the areas that we could ask students feedback, and you can set up small goals to include in your goals. And some of the empowering through goals that guide students to set personal learning goals. So use my goal for this week as a tracker. So you could track the entire week, and you can make a note consistently every day, and then just see the progress. It would be like amazing. So offer learning choices, let students choose how to show what they know. So, for example, like a student good at drawing, a student is good at making a video or presentation. So you can just always ask the students, like pick your format, like posters, voice notes, based on their choices. If they can bring up, it will be like even very interactive and successful. So each one has different ideas, right? So as a class, they will be like competitive, like a child can learn from others' interactions in others' posters. So encourage voices and reflection that use learning journals, like self checklist or peer feedback. You can always like giving feedback from teachers. It's normal. So taking feedbacks from their own fellow mates can also improve their progress. So hold students led conference, or that will glow or grow circles bigger. And yeah, with that, we are concluding the session, and we have like takeaways from today's session. That is, inclusive teaching starts with recognizing and valuing the diversity of all learners, and educators should understand each student's strength, needs, and background to guide their teaching, right? So it's just not their identity, it's like more of valuing their background and noticing their strength in each student. So using strategies like differentiated instruction and UDL that helps meet the needs of the students, planning ahead, what they really want to achieve, and that fit different learning styles and abilities irrespectively. And creating an inclusive classroom also requires like teamwork. So regular assessment and flexible way of teaching methodology. There's various teaching methodology that you could implement, and access the regular um, consistent things and reinforce the same thing every time where you see positive changes, right? And true inclusion means, like, as we discussed, ongoing adjustments, like using data to guide decisions and working closely with families and specialists, like with the coordinators, what they really want in the next steps. Yeah, so these are the sites like work I did. Dr. Florence, special or inclusive education. You can always check out. She has like wonderful book that's been published based on the inclusive learning and a lot of ideas about inclusive teaching methods. And Dr. Anscow, both. So he's also like one of the improving schools developing inclusion. So he had like wonderful strategic way of ideas. And finally, it's Kumudha that I've made my own building inclusive special education classroom, professional development from Peel District School Board. Yeah, so and like to have like stay update with ITU on Instagram. Amazing team. So thank you all for joining for today's session. I hope you all enjoyed. You can always post your questions in the chat below. I'm happy to help you for your questions based on today's takeaways and understanding about the learning inclusive way of teaching methods, where you can include all the students in mainstream. That's our successful area. And I would like to thank all the learners and all the participants to join in today's class. I hope you all enjoyed the session. You can always post your questions in chat so I can try to read and question. I'm just seeing the Okay, I see some of the questions that's being posted here. Let's see. Yeah, an inclusive way of learning promotes confidence and emotional support. That's right. Yeah, it's always just not the academic way of learning. It includes, more of like emotional support where they want, and that builds their confidence in all level. I hope I addressed all the questions. I'm trying to answer the chat questions that I can see from my chat. Yeah. So one of the participant is asking like how you feel safe from, stigma. So you feel like valued and you feel that you're belonged in that learning environment. As a teacher, it is very wise to get on the students, you know, uh, so you make to feel the student, disabilities like as ability, where they can believe in themselves. That's very most important for the next steps to moving further. Yeah, you can always email your questions and your thoughts. We can always have a chat and understanding about more depth. And I'm open in kumudashankari@gmail.com. Okay. Okay, with that, I'm trying to end my session and thank you all for joining for today's session. It was really a wonderful session. Thanks for your, participation.